Hey everyone. Thank you for tuning into ChannelBK. My name is Brian. This is Christian.
Also go by CK Glizzy or CWS23.
I'm gonna have all of his social media and stuff in the description below, not comments below, description below.
Yeah.
Yes, Christian is the special guest for this rankum. Yeah, it's a new rankum. This has been one that I promised him for a while, and then with No Way Home coming out, we were gonna do this as like a celebration for the new Spider-Verse movie coming out, but that got delayed. So we're doing this more as like a sandwich in between it. Like it's after No Way Home, before the next Spider-Verse movie, but also it's a celebration of the 60th year of Spider-Man being created. 1962,
I have
which
no
is
idea.
yeah. So that was kind of part of the reason why I thought it was perfect too. And the month that this is gonna be coming out is like the publication. So yeah, I've been promising Christian. I've been making sure he knows it's happening. And it's finally here. So we are gonna go through. We got 9 movies we gotta rank. We are not doing spin-offs. We're not including Venom. We're not including clearly the greatest one of all of them. It's Morbin
Or,
time.
yeah,
Uh,
no. Before this goes any further, Morbius was dog shit. I'm sorry. That was by far the worst film I've ever seen. Might be worse
I
than Last
it's
Airbender.
it's funny. I have not seen it because I knew how bad it was, and I'm like, I'll just wait till I don't have to pay for it anymore or pay for it at all. So I'm
I took
grateful.
I, I took my recent ex to go see that movie, and I was literally just waiting for that movie to be over. I was like, can this movie just end already? And she said this movie was good. She said it was better than the Batman.
Is that what did the relationship? You're like, we can't be a thing. I'm just kidding. I'm
Now
just kidding.
that's where
But we got so none of those are included, but we got 9 movies. We
yeah.
got 3 Tobey Maguire, we got 2 Andrew Garfield, we got 3 Tom Holland, and then we obviously got Spider-Verse, the animated one. So we're just gonna get right into it. We're gonna do 9 through 7, then 6 through 4, then 3 through 1. But I'm gonna let my illustrious guest Christian go because yeah, apparently this is gonna be kind of a hot topic video. I wasn't anticipating it to. I mean, I assume you were gonna have different opinions than me, besides like maybe obvious ones, but
There
I'm
is one.
interested in what you're thinking and what's on your list. So what is in your humble opinion the worst Spider-Man movies? The bottom 3.
So I've done some time, and one thing I realized is if I enjoy the movie, then it's good. If
Okay.
I groan at the movie or just feel frustrated while I'm watching it, then it's just gonna do it for me. And really, it's more about just wanting to see Spider-Man.
Okay.
So bottom of the list is Spider-Man Far From Home. I hated that movie for one specific reason. Your father figure gave you his stuff. $1 billion glasses to control pretty much half the world. And you give it to a dude you met less than a week, a day. And on top of that, they were trying to rush that whole MJ relationship, which I'm gonna be honest, makes the Sam Raimi Mary Jane seem better. Like, I'm sorry, but there's just so many problems with Far From Home that just made me just hate this version of Spider-Man. And essentially, No Way Home really saved Tom Holland for me just trashing on this whole series.
I
So,
literally thought you were a little over the top with like your way of being like, hey, I'm gonna have controversial opinions. So I thought you were just gonna say something that's like, oh, okay. I was not ready for that.
oh yeah. And I'm gonna be honest, Mysterio, I'm sorry, but I know he's a pretender, but it was just so lame. Like, I'm sorry, No Way Home. They murked his aunt. What did Mysterio do besides get some drones to shoot up a building or supposedly kill some people? I mean, he didn't really do anything. Like, say he was a poser as a hero, but really he was also a poser as a villain. And on top of that, he came from Iron Man again. I mean, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me.
I will say, as much as I'm shocked by this opinion, there are some things that you said in that I do agree with that I'll get into once I get to the MCU movie. So I don't think everything you said is kind of crazy, but I do agree with some of the stuff you said. But wow, that's a
I,
shock.
I
So
really, I was really of him as Spider Boy Jr. throughout this whole film. I was like, I don't know why they're calling him Spider Boy Jr. They really just cleared it up in this film. And it was like one thing that really kind of I noticed from the trailers is they really kind of false advertised this movie on what it was supposed to be about. We thought it was going to be a movie about him grieving the loss of Iron Man, but really it just felt more like a comedy short, like how it was with Homecoming, except he's in all these different remote locations. So it just kind of felt like a repeat as well.
yeah. Well, okay.
It's not,
Bottom of the barrel for Christian
yeah.
is Spider-Man No Way Home, or No Way Home, Far From Home. Sorry. When it gets to the whole home thing in the MCU movies, it gets confusing sometimes. Anyways, so what is now maybe your less angry number 8 pick?
All right, this is actually a film that people will hate on, but personally, I enjoy. So I do see why people dislike it because the story is a little messy, it's all over the place, and that's probably gonna be most obvious. Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Okay.
Now, personally, I actually think that this is by far the funniest Spider-Man movie out of all of them. Like one of the most, like the funniest ones, because really depends on what you want from the movie. Me, I just want to see Spider-Man, to see him crack the jokes, do his action scenes and stuff. And I mean, let's be honest, whatever you want to say about Electro, that fight scene was sweet. And on top of that, the Green Goblin stuff with Gwen dying and stuff, like this was by far the most developed and probably the most tragic Spider-Man out of all of them. And you really just feel it in this movie. Now, with that being said, this movie did too much with all the villains. Rhino was lame. Which one
I
call his?
am the Rhino.
But he did. I'm sorry, but Rhino. Then again, even though he was lame, he was funny. At least when you compare Mysterio to Rhino, you could be lame and then just be lame versus be lame and actually be funny. Cause he, I mean, I'm sorry, but Rhino just cracked me up during that whole film. Like, I'm a killer. Ah, I'm Russia. But no, what should I call it? Yeah. And the story with his whole parents and stuff, I was like, I mean, cool, but do we care?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, I mean, personally, I just want to get past that whole story. But yeah, so Amazing Spider-Man 2,
Amazing
bit
Spider-Man
of a
2.
story, but Andrew, I think, is by far the funniest Spider-Man out of the three. So,
Okay, very
yep.
nice. So number 7.
Number 7. Now, like I said, this is probably obvious, but I'll say as bad and cringeworthy as it was, I can't say though he wasn't funny. And this goes to Spider-Man 3. Now, emo Peter Parker, yes, that dance, I don't know why they did that. Sam Raimi didn't want that, but he really didn't want it, but they just
I'm gonna
forced.
throw some dirt in your eye.
I, I, but it's stuff like that that had me cracking up. Like, I'm gonna put some dirt in your eye, or like I just felt like some of the stuff he was saying, like when he wasn't trying to be all emo and just be, who he was. That shit was just funny to me. And the symbiote, I'll say, it had a good premise, but it just felt like it was doing too much with that Sandman, Green Goblin Jr. and stuff.
Mm.
And yeah, and also another major thing that I'll just get out the way with the Sam Raimi films. I think Mary Jane is by far the worst love interest in these movies. Like, I'm sorry, but she is just atrocious. And honestly, this makes me kind of want to put Amazing Spider-Man 2 above this film because at least you actually care for the female if something happens to her.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I'll say Sandman was a good villain for the movie, but then for like a little addition, Goblin Jr., like, clear the air with that. But Venom, they were just doing too much at that point. And
Yeah.
they said, let's get Troper Grace. as the big
Of
bad Eddie.
course, Topher Grace, the one person you think of for Venom.
That 70s show. Yeah, let's get him.
But okay, your bottom three. I'm very intrigued. I was not ready for your number 9 though. I think just the way you went off to was so funny.
And it's the more
Um,
I watch that film, the more I just actually hate it. Like the first time I saw it, I was like, all right, it's not bad. It's not that bad. I mean, it could have been better. But then the more and more I just got into it, the more angry I got at it, bro. And I'm like, why did
well, I will say, other than that hot take, I mostly agree with your other two, because at my bottom, I have Amazing Spider-Man 2 as well. I really liked how you prefaced it. No matter what I'm gonna say now about the rest of your list, I think your preface is really good of an understanding of like, yes, like this is specific with this movie because I had a fight with the Amazing Spider-Man movies because I think both of them are bad for different reasons. Or not, you know what? I don't want to say the word bad. They're not good for different reasons to me. The first Amazing Spider-Man is a complete movie. It's straightforward. It has good things. I do agree with you on the relationship stuff. Now, obviously, that goes to show because they were a thing during the movie. So, like, you could just tell their charisma and their chemistry is like
it worked?
it works. And I think the best part of the Amazing Spider-Man movies is them. Like, that's the best part of the movie. Now Amazing Spider-Man 2 has some of my favorite Spider-Man stuff in it, but it's a hot mess of a movie. So I sat back and went, what would I say? And I think I would rather sit and watch Amazing Spider-Man 1 first because it's actually like, it's before, like, it's still a little bit of a hot mess, and I'll get into that. But this movie is just the opening, not the stupid Mission Impossible opening with the parents. The real opening where he's swinging is incredible. My stomach drops every time I watch it. I'm like, oh my god, this is amazing. Pun intended. The relationship stuff is good. I think one of my favorite things ever in a Spider-Man movie is when he fucking shows up to stop Electro and he has the fireman hat on while he's helping the fire department. I'm like, that's Spider-Man. Like, that's goofy and funny, but it's the charm of it. My main problem with the Amazing Spider-Man movies is you could tell that other than, I mean, I guess Emma Stone, because I think, like I said, their chemistry is great, but really other than Andrew Garfield, none of these people cared. It was a paycheck. It was to keep the rights. And it's upsetting because, like, we'll probably bring up their actors so much, but I think Andrew's just one of those people where, like, he's so good for the role, but
Yeah.
it's so unfortunate because he was kind of stuck in the bad ones where it's like, I think he has the most potential.
Yeah.
Um, but it sucks because, like you said, like, this movie is just, I think the ending stuff was the best part of the movie, but I felt like everything with Goblin seemed forced and rushed. I think Electro was just, I mean, rewatching it before No Way Home, it was not nearly as like awful as I remember it, but it was still kind of like you're doing too much. Like, it's
And,
too much, and like the parent stuff they just dropped halfway through the movie. They're like, we don't care. Like, they're trying to do all these things.
yeah, and the
Focus on
thing,
one thing.
and they were also trying to set up more movies to be made later on with
Mhm.
like the whole Sinister Six, and that's what they're doing with like films like Morbius and Venom. They're trying to set up more stuff. Now, Venom was, while it has some of its problems, it was enjoyable. There was nothing enjoyable about Morbius, and that's the thing. They were trying to
Yeah.
set up stuff that eventually just got cut.
Yeah. So it's like, this is, Spider-Man 3 is the beginning of when we saw Sony screwing with the people that they worked with, but like this is a big example of that. Um but at
And what?
number 8, I have the first Amazing Spider-Man movie. Now, this is a movie, yes, you can say whatever the hell you want because this movie, going into this movie, this was the movie that everyone was talking about, right? Because it was the whole reboot. We were supposed to get Spider-Man 4. Everyone was talking about it. This movie is super fine. It's not bad, but it's not like, when I remember watching this movie, this is the beginning of, they did not know what they wanted to do. there are so many things in this movie that they set up that, like, so the whole ending, for example.
Oh
Well,
yeah, that
okay, let's
we
just talk about Lizard's a dumb villain anyways. We don't have to say that. Like, we all know Lizard was kind of goofy, whatever.
it
That's fine.
was.
There's a scene at the end where he makes the cops turn into lizard people, and then they never show anything, and then they just turn back to humans. There's a lot of that stuff in the movie where you're kind of like, you're not gonna, okay, we're just not gonna,
With the whole uncle stuff.
the whole uncle stuff. And then, yeah, like, this is the whole big thing was everything about the parents, right? And it was like, and honestly, the reason why this movie also I'm not a big fan of is because this was in the day and age where Christopher Nolan was doing Batman. So everyone wanted to copy what he was doing, where we're gonna make we're gonna make Spider-Man. We're gonna make him dark, and it's gonna be grim, and it's gonna be realistic. In the same movie that they have a fucking guy who makes himself into a lizard. So it's like, it's a weird juxtaposition. Again, I don't think this movie is at this part of my list because I think it's bad. It's just very fine to me. Like, again, the relationship stuff I think is great. I will be honest, first time I saw this movie, I'm like, he is not Peter Parker. He's too cute. He's too cool. Oh, Peter Parker, he's a skateboarder. Oh, whatever. Like, there's things about this movie where I'm like,
They made him a cool kid pretty
yeah,
much. And
they made him a cool kid, and it was just so like, and then, like, the other problem with the movie, he is literally giving up his identity every minute. He's taking his mask off every minute. All the shit at the school where he's like dunking on Flash Thompson and nobody says anything. He throws the football, dents the football thing, but nobody says anything. Like, there's so many stupid logical things in this movie. Like, that's, again, like, from a logistical standpoint, I'm watching this and I'm like, he's, hey kid, put on my Spider-Man mask. Hey, Dennis Leary, you know or take off my Spider-Man mask, blah, 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 blah. It's just so, like, again, there's stuff in it that works. And through the corporateness of this movie, that is so, like, nobody cares about this movie besides Andrew Garfield. A lot of that shines through. And again, I don't think it's nearly as gaudy and over the top as the second Amazing Spider-Man movie, but it's just not, it feels soulless to me. And again, it's upsetting because I think Andrew really came to be like, I want to be Spider-Man. And it's upsetting, but it's fine. It's not bad. This is when I start to think the movies are at least okay. I think Amazing Spider-Man 2 is just not good. But at number 7, we are in agreement because I agree. Spider-Man 3 is my number 7. Even though I don't like this movie, or I shouldn't say don't like, even though there's problems, and I'll get into them. When we talk about movies that have no soul, the Amazing Spider-Man movies, even though this movie is a bit of a hot mess, there are still elements that you could tell that Sam Raimi, like the Sandman stuff, I think is great. I think it's great. Venom aside, because obviously we all know Venom was Sony. I could take that out of the movie. It's fine. But there's real, like, there are moments in this movie where I'm like, God, this movie, even though it's not that amazing, there's so many parts of it that I think are still good. And like, I do feel like I do agree with you. I think Mary Jane, it's just kind of like every Spider-Man movie, she gets herself in trouble. And then she kind of hates Peter, and then she wants to like him again, and it's all over the place. But, like, there's moments in this movie where, like, I genuinely am like, and honestly, I am in full agreement. I don't care what anyone says. I think everything with emo Peter Parker trumps so many of the bad things in the Amazing Spider-Man movies because it's so stupid and goofy and over the top and corny. But it works for me because that's Peter Parker. He is this guy who thinks who's trying to put on this persona of being cool. Now, I think Tobey Maguire, I think it's one of those conversations where I don't think he's an amazing Spider-Man. I think he's a good Peter Parker. I think Andrew's kind of the other way, where I think he's not a bad Peter Parker, but I think he's a better Spider-Man because he's quippier and a more smartass.
And that's what you want is like,
yeah. but like I don't know. And like the whole finale in this movie, it's not so over the top like it like an Electro, I'm gonna take the city down. And then in the first Amazing Spider-Man, I'm gonna make everyone into lizards. And you're like, wait, what? Also, the trailers for those two past movies, they spoil everything in the trailer, like the after credit scene. So that's my other problem. But in this, it's just again, it's just they're fighting at the building and it's a little more quaint. It's not again amazing, but I mean the Harry stuff too. Even though the Green Goblin stuff feels a little bit rushed, we had two movies to build on Harry and his
Yeah.
relationship. So in this movie, it does, as much as it's still a little rushed, it feels like it makes more sense that he turns bad than in Amazing Spider-Man 2, where he's like, I need your blood, Peter. And it's just so like, ugh. But yeah, um this movie, and then yeah, again, it's doing a little too much, but it's not Amazing Spider-Man 2 level of too much. It feels like it's like you could feel where Sam Raimi is involved and you like it. Like again, bring me more Sandman stuff. That's
Yeah.
the good shit in the movie. But there's other things that are like, yeah, it's not that good. And again, it's dated. Those movies are dated, even though some of them are great, they're dated. So, but yeah, that's my 9 through 7. So, Mr. Christian, we're getting into now our Spider-Man movies we could talk a little more up about. So, what is your 6 through 4?
All right. So to start it off, I feel like you did talk a little shit on Amazing Spider-Man. So we're gonna get into that real quick. So I'll
Is
admit,
that your number 6?
yeah.
Okay.
So I'll admit, Lizard, he was doing too much, and I will admit that in when it came down to him trying to figure out who killed his uncle and stuff, they just dropped that arc
Yeah,
completely.
they're like whatever.
But I'll say this: name another Spider-Man that's going to take off his shoe and throw it at the lizard. Another Spider-Man that's going to steal a cop's gun, talk about, I just did 80% of your job, and you going to shoot at me? Who just webs up his opponent and makes fun of him and stuff. Like, this was the film that made me want to see funny Spider-Man.
I will say I always like how in like the older Spider-Man movies, I really like the scenes when like a New Yorker is like, "We're gonna help you," and the scene at the end when like they get all the things for him to swing. I'm not gonna lie, that legit is emotional. Like that's a good moment because that's even the Raimi movies have those where it's like Spider-Man helped someone and like the new, hey, we're gonna help you, Spidey. Let's go, Spidey. But it's good. Like again, there's moments. I don't think this movie is like bad because it's just god awful. It's just very like it's like this. It's a flat line, and then once in a while, it's like, oh, that's good. Oh, that's really good. That's my opinion on the movie.
And it's just, and for me, it was like, remember, this came out right after Spider-Man 3, which most people just
Yeah,
tore up.
it's
First thing,
night and day tonally and just the way it looks and stuff.
exactly. And then when it came down to Amazing Spider-Man, it kind of gave us a good majority of what we wanted to see from Spider-Man. We wanted to see him be more funny. We wanted to see a good love interest, and we wanted to see more of a villain that felt like it came from the comics. But at the same time, I'll admit the lizard was a little. I'll say once he learned that he turned into a lizard, that whole thing about him being addicted to that stuff, I was like, all right, not but and it really did show in No Way Home because they were just making fun of the whole premise that he just wanted to turn people into lizards. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. So Amazing Spider-Man is, I'll say it's a mid Spider-Man movie, but I personally always enjoy this movie more than I ever will for Far From Home. I've just, I mean, really, at least Lizard was trying to benefit society. What was Mysterio trying to do? Shoot people. All because Tony made fun of a name of his project.
Well, okay. You're number 5. Stop crabbing all over Mysterio. What's number 5?
All right, number 5 is actually kind of shocking, but yet probably not shocking, and that is Spider-Man No Way Home.
Okay.
Now, let's get this clear. It is a really good movie. It's probably the best Spider-Man movie we've gotten in years. However, I will admit that there are some problems that I think some people overlook just because they got Andrew and Toby. And there's one mental note to remember. This film confirms who we all think is the best Spider-Man. Let's remember this. When this film ended, what did people want to see afterwards? We didn't want to see Tom Holland. We kind of wanted to see Toby. We wanted to see Andrew. So give us Amazing Spider-Man 3 already. Let's see the dark journey that Andrew took when he lost Gwen, those years he spent. But aside from that, no. The first half of the movie, I will admit, I think it was good, but I kind of want to skip it just because we knew that Toby and Andrew were going to show up and like all the other villains. Like the whole premise of him, trying to get his identity cleared, which I'm going to say one thing. That was actually kind of a stupid wish that Doctor Strange gave Peter. Forget the whole world knew that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. I'll admit that was kind of selfish because, hold on, remember the only reason he did that was so him and his friends could go to college.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of wishing for something else or something like, oh, I don't know, wish for them to forget who Peter Parker was within that time period. Because remember, he said, forget everybody is Spider-Man. How about you just make the wish that everybody forgets who Peter Parker was before Mysterio revealed it?
I'm not
But
gonna say anything because when I get to No Way Home, I'll divulge
all right, and
similar views when it comes to the like of the movie, but also certain context that needs to be thrown out the window in order to enjoy it, sort of thing. But
I'll say that yeah, that whole college reason he wanted to go to college. Let's be honest, Peter didn't need to go to college. He was a superhero. I'm not going to college if I'm Spider-Man. But I'll say when the villain showed up. Now that's one thing I like. They fixed everything that was bad about the previous Spider-Man movies and just improved villains like Sandman. I'll say they did kind of clown on Lizard a little bit, but no, Electro. Let's get that. That was who they fixed up the most. And honestly, he's probably one of the. I'll say he was my third favorite villain in the movie. Now, and another thing to remember also, Green Goblin stole the show with this movie. We all thought that Doc Ock was the big bad villain of Spider-Man when it came to the movies, but I mean, I can't think of another Spider-Man villain that just killed Aunt May like that. Like, god damn. And yeah, so I will admit that when it came to the Toby and Andrew stuff, we all knew that was gonna happen. I feel that was their worst kept secret ever. They should have done better to keep it under wraps, but they could only do so much. And I think finally, what one thing I will say that they did right is they retconned Spider-Man because the original premise of this movie was just Spider-Man on the run from like Kraven the Hunter. But then it was like, all right, let's just do this multiverse because we can do it because we're Marvel, yeah. But I'll say they finally fixed one thing. They finally give Spider-Man the chance to be his own hero instead of being carried by the Avengers. And really, he's no longer Stark Boy Jr. anymore. He can finally actually be Spider-Man. And I'll say this though, the wish was stupid though. Again, because let's think about this. His wish that was forget everybody knew who Peter Parker was, right?
yeah,
How about you instead of forgetting who Peter Parker is, how about you make the wish that everybody forgets who Spider-Man is? You could still have your life, and yeah, you would not be. Nobody would know who you are as Spider-Man. But what's to say you can't start over? Because remember, he was only Spider-Man for like what 3-4 years,
mm-hmm.
and he was dusted for 5 of them years. So
It's true.
yeah, but I'll say they actually did finally Marvel did do something right with Spider-Man for once. They retconned his whole thing and now they're making him his own hero. And that is gonna probably be the premise for Spider-Man freshman year that I just actually saw.
Yeah. So okay, number 4. Going off of No Way Home, what do you think is slightly better than No Way Home?
The film that gave us MCU Spider-Man Homecoming. Now, I'm a little biased because this came out like on my birthday and stuff, so it was like a good treat for me. But I'll say that this film actually made it feel like this was Spider-Man in Queens. And also it was like we got Spider-Man who was with a little bit of the Avengers, but didn't like overbear it with like how they did for like his other team up films for real. Uh it's really hard to say much about this film because this is kind of like the one film that some people will forget about, but it's also like one that's really, really good if you sit down to watch it. Because, like, let's get one thing clear. I think Vulture is by far one of the best villains in probably the MCU. Because everything he's
Yeah.
doing and because he wants to like be a bad guy, is because people are screwing him over, and it's really it kind of lets you see what the civilians have to do when superheroes like cause all this destructive stuff. And it's like when he said, I'll say best scene in the whole movie was when he said, "I'll kill you and everybody you love." Think about that. This a dude in a bird suit just threatening to kill Spider-Man and his family, and he was shook too. He could have just punched Vulture and then that's it. But no,
Yeah.
he was shaking.
Yeah.
Like, but remember, this is formerly Batman, so of course he's gonna put the fear of God in whoever he wants.
It carries over.
I'll say, I almost did tear up in this one scene when he was lifting that rubble up from beneath him.
Oh no, I cried during that scene because that was the one time where like just Tom's performance and the vulnerability where he has to become that superhero in that moment. Like, yeah, because it's from the comics, I think, too, that specific scene. So it really hits you.
And it shows considering how many other medias they'll put in. Like they'll put in Spectacular Spider-Man. They even put it actually in the Marvel Spider-Man video game, literally like in the beginning where he was like lifting that rubble up and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it really did trying to show that Spider-Man is still a kid and he's growing up, but he wanted to show Iron Man that he just wants to be the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Until Far From Home came out and just said,
Okay. Are you done with your number 4 Homecoming?
Yeah, good movie. Probably one of the best Spider-Man movies from actually, yeah, better than the 3 MCU movies. So yeah.
Well, okay. Well, that's a good transition because my number 6 is Spider-Man Homecoming. So I'm going to start by saying this. Do I think this is a really good MCU movie?
Yes.
Yeah. Do I think it is a good Spider-Man movie? Absolutely not. This movie is you are talking about. So here's the beginning of my problem. This is Iron Man Jr. Iron Man Jr. time. Basically, this entire movie. So first off, there's more problems with it than that. So first off, the whole retcon thing of like they're just wiping the slate clean is like the best thing they did with the MCU Spider-Man, mainly because I don't like how the first 2 villains in the MCU trilogy of Spider-Man are blue collar people who are like working their way up, and Spider-Man is supposed to be the blue collar kind of like, I'm making this for myself, and basically he has Mr. Billionaire Tony Stark on his side. And the villains are the people that, so I've had an issue with that, even though I agree with you. I think Vulture is one of the best villains they've had in Spider-Man movies, MCU in general. I think he's great. I think the twist is legit. You talk about worst kept secrets, the fact that that entire movie I sat there and I'm thinking, what is about to happen? And then when he opens that door, I shit you not, that theater got quiet. We were all like, what?
Oh yeah.
How? Well, and like, it's one of those things where the play that they do is obviously Liz, right? Is Liz the name of his first girlfriend? Obviously, in real life, it's the way of like you see her and you're thinking, you're not going to expect Michael Keaton to be dad. And then obviously when you see his wife is black, you're like, well, okay, that's obvious how they would do it. But you're sitting there like, wait a minute. What? Wait a minute. What is going on? And then obviously once you see it, you're just like, oh, okay, well, yeah, this makes sense. Like this could work. It's modern day, whatever. But I thought he was great, but literally the final act of the movie where he's not in a super special Iron Man suit, pretty much, is
Yeah.
good Spider-Man. When he's
Yeah.
in his old school suit and he's fighting Shocker and he's, that whole whatever, it's fine. Shocker's one of those kind of villains where they do what they do with him.
Yeah.
But like
I
there's
will.
it feels like it's just he's Iron Man, and I feel like Iron Man is just he's too much. I feel like he was a little bit too much in it, and when it's not Spider-Man related and it's Peter Parker stuff, I think it works really well. I don't
Yeah.
like the fact that everyone found out he was Spider-Man in it. Now, obviously, that doesn't matter as much now because of what they did in No Way Home. But
Kinda.
as a Spider-Man movie and like what Spider-Man is and what he does, I think this is he's not in New York. He's like over here in DC, and he's like it's just and there's parts of it where again, I don't think it's a bad movie because it is. Like or it's not a bad movie. That's what I meant to say. Like it's good.
I think it's not.
That's why it's number 6. It's above 3 other movies. It is not bad. I would say this is good. I think it's a good MCU movie. I think it's a good Spider-Man movie, or it's a good movie with Spider-Man. I don't think it's a good Spider-Man movie though.
Also, the
Yes.
dark suit is kind of what threw me off with the film, but that's where it picks up in the final act, where it's like, all right, he gets his normal suit, but I will admit that he got the Stark suit back again. Then
Yeah.
it was like, all right,
Like and we'll get again, I don't think even though obviously as you could tell by my list, the other 2 MCU Spider-Man movies, one that I know you love so much, is still on my list. These problems still carry over. So I'm not trying to say that they change, and I said things that like I will bring up when I bring these up. So don't you worry. But for now, we're gonna get away from that, and we're gonna go back to where it all started in 2002 when I was a youngin. Because at number 5 I got Spider-Man. Wow,
huh?
I was not
Huh?
anticipating that. Okay, so
What?
this
Hold on.
is. Are you about to like go to the
Wipe my
bathroom
ass
or
with all,
something?
no, I'm about to wipe my ass with all this bullshit you're spreading. What the hell is wrong with you?
Oh my god. This is where it all started. It's fun to go back and look into who was going to do this movie because like David Fincher was going to do like a dark version of it, and then like I know in James Cameron's version he was the one that had the web shooters come out of the wrist. So it's cool to see like the little things that carried over until we got Sam Raimi, hometown legend, the man from Royal Oak, Michigan, you know, the icon. Um this movie is a little dated. It obviously has kind of goofy CGI. I'm not trying to say like that's like a huge fault of it. Um but it's just a good solid like comic book movie. I will tell you when Uncle Ben dies. I know it's a meme now when Toby's crying, but that shit still hits. Like it you feel it, and like
Yeah.
the way like the whole well, and then obviously we have the whole problematic joke where he calls Bonesaw gay when he fights him, because like now people want to cancel the movie because he says the whole thing about did your boyfriend get you. I don't care, it was 2002, shit changes. But it's funny to think about that. Like I remember rewatching it before No Way Home and going, oh well, that's a weird joke nowadays. But like yeah. But the origin, I think, is solid. I think the Green Goblin performance is Willem Dafoe being like, I don't care that this is a comic book movie. I'm Willem Dafoe. I'm a thespian actor. I'm going to show up. Even though the costume is a little goofy. I love the hand-to-hand combat, though, in it. I thought the fights are really good. They're very visceral. The Danny Elfman score. Again, it's like a solid beginning to, and again, a lot of my problems I had with Amazing Spider-Man 1 where it came to like some of his origin stuff. Again, I'm not saying there's things in this movie I think are worse than the first Amazing Spider-Man. I agree. Because again, I think that's the problem with Spider-Man movies is a lot of it just depends on what you think is better than which, like interpretation or relationship. So that kind of plays a little bit into it. But I think just his whole like him being goofy, you know, school paper, and like all that stuff. And like again, the villain stuff is very over the top, kind of comic booky. But unlike the Lizard, Willem Dafoe is Willem Dafoe, and he's like, I don't care. Like, I'm just gonna act my ass off. Um, and yeah, I think it's just great. Like, it's a really solid movie that I think in hindsight, it's not amazing, but it has good things. And Sam Raimi injected himself into the movie. Um, I feel very uncomfortable about to talk about number 4 because this is your favorite Spider-Man movie, and that is Spider-Man Far From Home.
You need some paper?
No, I don't, because I completely disagree with many of your comments about this movie. Um,
They
problem still with the whole villain thing when it came to it's Tony Stark and it's like Tony Stark related and everything with the whole blue collarness, that stuff still carries over. So that stuff I'm not running away from. And then when it came to the whole, like, of course, we're not going to have Spider-Man in New York. But this movie coming off of what Endgame was, this movie was a nice like release to be like, let's just take it back. And I think first off, I don't know where you're getting mixed up in Mysterio's thing. Mysterio's whole thing is the thing about this movie is it plays itself not seriously, but seriously when it needs to play itself seriously. So like the whole scene when they cut to his whole origin and it's the whole zoom in, they knew that it was over the top and goofy. They knew how they wanted to play it. And the whole thing is it's a revenge movie. And Jake Gyllenhaal is over here like, I want to prove, like, I want to show what our technology can do that Tony just wanted to be like, whatever. And it's
killing people?
Not killing people.
He clearly wanted to.
His whole thing was people are going to have to die in order for me to paint this whole. He was a megalomaniac. Like, he wasn't sane. He was crazy in that. Mysterio, I think the way he was portrayed in this, him being my favorite Spider-Man villain and Jake Gyllenhaal at the time when this got announced, I'm like, oh my God, Jake Gyllenhaal is playing my favorite Spider-Man villain. He plays the role so perfectly and it's just so theatrical. And I knew the twist was going to happen. And again, it's one of those things where I don't agree with your assessment on why Tom Holland gives him the glasses. I'm not saying you're wrong, though. That's one of those things where I think you need to be like, in my opinion, it's fine. I think other people disagree, and that's fine. Like, that's a part of the movie where I'm not going to fight you on you being right or wrong, because I think what you said is valid about that. I personally felt like I think his whole relationship was, I need to find now who I can look up to. And he saw that in him. And I think, again, he's a kid. He doesn't have the best moments. And he gave him that trust of the stupid plot device, which is those dumbass glasses, which that was a whole part of the movie where I'm like, this is bad. Like, I don't like this. But it's fun. The movie is fun. There's so much lightheartedness to it. There's a lot of fun adventure in it. I think the action set pieces are actually like cool and interesting. I think, again, the whole plot twist, the way it happens and like the way they unravel it, I think is actually kind of funny and goofy. And then the ending when he goes up to Happy and he's like, dude, I don't know what's going on. I don't think you're real. What is reality? And his whole scene with Mysterio where like like when he grabs the gun and he stares at him, I'm like, oh my God. Like, that is when I was on the fence with Tom Holland. I think it was refreshing that I think he was a good mix of a good Peter and a good Spider-Man, but this movie, acting wise, really solidified like, oh no, like, this kid is good. Like, he may have not been the best all around, whatever, but I think we're good. I think Tom definitely earned his spot. And I think the stuff with Mysterio and the whole like snow globe thing and all that, like, that shit was fucking awesome. That felt ripped out of a comic book.
All right, yeah, I'll say the same thing. Not to give complete shit to this movie, I'll admit that thing he did, I did feel like this is something you would see in the comic books. I was like, all right, this is actually pretty cool. But you said something about revenge. Who is he getting revenge on? The person he wanted revenge on is dead. So instead
His
of a
okay.
minor,
So how I took it is the whole idea is he feels like he is basically, I think what his whole thing is he is trying to be Tony Stark. His whole thing was he worked for Tony, which again, I don't, you already know my opinion about these MCU Spider-Man movies with the whole Iron Man thing. I already don't like that. But if I take it for what it is, his whole thing is he wants to be Tony Stark. But like he looks at Tony Stark in a way where when he does all this work for this technology that he feels like is good. Obviously, it's a little different than the comics, obviously, because in the comics he's a visual effects artist and
yeah,
he again, but that stuff carries over in terms of he's a showman who is a joke, who is lying about who he is and putting on a performance. And I think the suit is awesome too in the movie. But his whole thing is when Tony Stark just basically says like what you did means nothing because this is what I want to actually use it for. He wants to be able to show like what he's made is actually like useful. And again, you were saying everything about him killing people. He basically says multiple times if people are going to die, then people got to die. Like if I have to show, but like that's the other thing is like in all these superhero movies, all these people die. It's the whole repercussion of it, right? And like I just took it as his whole thing was he just wanted to be this guy that people idolize like Tony and like do something technologically speaking that was groundbreaking that wasn't just made as a joke. Now, again, I look at it as the context of what I got versus what we could have gotten. MCU Spider-Man up until No Way Home was a certain kind of like, I think this movie works a lot more than Homecoming based on like the more fun, quippy stuff with Spider-Man and his relationship with Mysterio and all the fun that they have and that whole relationship. I don't think the whole way things play out is like what I would have wanted. But in terms of what this movie was following Endgame and Homecoming and what I wanted, this was a little bit more of what I wanted in Spider-Man versus Homecoming. And that's where I'm going to leave it because we'll fight about this for like another hour. So that is where I'm going to leave at my number 4. But
Spider-Man
it's
ran.
okay. It's okay now because now we're talking about our top 3 favorite Spider-Man movies. This is what the people came to see. So, what is your number 3 through 1?
Spider-Man ran like a pussy in Far From Home. All right, I'm done. I'm done. I'm done.
Anyways,
All right, so these three, I actually had a hard time choosing between them because these two were my childhood Spider-Man movies. Like these were films I grew up with. So no Amazing Spider-Man, no MCU Spider-Man. These were just the only three you got.
mm-hmm.
And it was really tough to pick one, but I eventually sat down and said, all right, Spider-Man 1 is going to be number 3, but personally this is like my number 1 for Spider-Man because this is not just the film that kicked it off, but this was the only version of Spider-Man that I knew. So it's a little bit of bias, but it's something that just gave you fully of what Spider-Man is. You get the origin story, you get his transition as a hero, you get his trash love interest, you get the Flash Thompson, you get like the villains, you pretty much get everything you need to know about Spider-Man in this movie. You get Harry, you get Norman, his aunt, uncle, everything. MJ, like they pretty much say this is Spider-Man, this is the story of him, and like this is probably the perfect origin story for Spider-Man. Now, you said a while ago that the effects were a little dated. I don't care what you say. That final web swing always goes hard to this day.
No,
But
and again, the thing that I wanted you to know is like that was less on like that stuff because that stuff I know going back to I'm gonna go okay. I was talking about like when he nukes the guys on top of the balcony and they all just and that's but here's the thing though, it's dated, but that's Sam Raimi because he did Evil Dead. So
yeah,
that's how I took it, is like this is Sam Raimi's quirky vision that he has where it kind of comes across as a little cringy and over the top. But it's Sam Raimi, and you could feel like he has his DNA in the movie. So, like, that's more so of what I'm talking about with, like, the VFX and stuff.
But this is by far, this is also like one of the coldest movies too, because it's like Spider-Man gets like he saves everybody, but then gets dragged around by Goblin, takes a grenade to the face, bro. The same grenade that's supposed to turn people into skeletons, and then starts getting punked by Goblin and stuff. And
Yeah.
this is one thing that is true. The power of his boner saved him. Cause he threatened MJ, he said, all right, time to whoop this nigga's ass. I'm gonna start punking this goblin now. And I'm sorry, but what did he love about MJ? What did he like? What is your appeal of MJ?
What is my appeal of MJ?
Hold on, let's get this straight. She starts banging Flash Thompson, the dude that's bullying the dude
Deathstroke.
He likes. And then, oh yeah, Deathstroke.
Joe Manganiello.
So yeah, she's banging Deathstroke, and then after that, who does she go to next? His whatchamacallit, his rich best friend. And then after those two leave her, or like they're done with her, she goes to Peter Parker. And I'm sorry, but I don't see any chemistry that they build. Spider-Man built the chemistry with MJ. MJ did not build the chemistry with Peter Parker.
You know what? There's a lot of crazy shit you've said this video so far, and I really like the way that you put that. I definitely think the Spider-Man MJ is a lot, you could feel that a lot more than Peter and MJ. I never took their chemistry as like none. I think they do what they do. It's not like I watch them and it just feels like it's like watching a like paint dry. But like you said, it's definitely like there's a lot that's kind of missing where you're kind of like, I feel like there should be more, but that's not there.
Exactly. And that's why like all the other Spider-Man films, they leave it as bad as it was, Far From Home at least set up the connection with him and MJ. I mean, sure, he was just sipping for her the whole trip and was ducking his responsibilities as Spider-Man. But no, aside from that, whatchamacallit? Yeah, she just only seemed to care about Spider-Man, and it didn't seem like she felt anything for Peter. And that's the one thing that people will misinterpret is, what do you want to see? Do you want to see Spider-Man or Peter Parker? Tobey Maguire gave the best performance as Peter Parker. Andrew Garfield gave the best performance as Spider-Man. Tom Holland gave us, I would say, a 50-50. He gave us a pretty good Peter Parker and then again a pretty good Spider-Man. Like they all seem to balance out, but it's like a percentage of how they portray each character, and you really see it in this film because really, I think of the Spider-Man films for Sam Raimi it's the story about Peter Parker being Spider-Man instead of Tom Holland's film of Spider-Man trying to be Peter Parker.
Exactly. But again, that's the whole MCU, and like this was when that wasn't even like a thing, so it's kind of that context too. But no, that's a good point.
And yeah, and it's just that's the first Spider-Man film will always just be like the film that got me into Spider-Man. Like this is like the sentimental of Spider-Man and who he is and what you want to get from him.
Yeah.
Now, number two, though, they said, you know what, let's crank that shit up, bro. And comes Spider-Man 2. Now, I personally, as a kid, I thought Spider-Man 1 was better than Spider-Man 2. But as I got older, I started to appreciate what Spider-Man 2 was doing. And
Yeah.
it was some deep stuff in this film. Now, I'm gonna get this little rant out the way. Worst version of MJ. That she in any film, any love interest you see in Spider-Man movies, this was her at her worst.
See, you know what? Even though I agree with you on the MJ stuff, I will disagree a little bit only because I do agree that I think since this movie is so heightened, like I think everything is so, like you said, I think the VFX, literally when I just watched it before No Way Home, I'm like, this movie still really holds up. Like there's not that many, there's like one or two scenes where you can clearly tell that Alfred Molina is like a CGI person, but this movie still holds up. I actually think this movie of MJ I'm not saying it's perfect, but I think in this movie, this is the one movie out of all of them where I don't know if it's just the fact that the whole movie itself is amazing or if it's her performance and the way she's directed in the relationship, but I actually kind of got a lot more in this movie. I think it kind of goes a little bit weird again, back to like the first Spider-Man movie and 3, but I actually think in this one, there's a lot more interesting psychological stuff going on, and the whole thing of him not being able to be there for her because he is Spider-Man and she doesn't know it. I actually got more in this movie. I actually disagree. I actually think this movie, whether or not it's amazing or not, I actually think this movie, I was like, okay, like I get something now. Like I actually think there was more to it than before.
And there probably was more to it, but MJ was just the most toxic person I've ever. Like, I'm sorry, but like, it's true. At first, what happened was she asked him, "Do you love me?" He says, "No." And then right after that, she says she's getting married. Right?
And then
That's
she leaves Jay Jonah's her son so she could
and
go be
at
with
the
Peter.
altar, at the altar. And and I'm sorry, but as a kid, how was a 5-year-old gonna get so mad at a girl for doing that? I was like, damn, bro. I mean, yes, she knows he's Spider-Man or whatever, but he said he doesn't want to be with you. This dude is an astronaut. He's gonna be making bank. Peter Parker takes pictures of himself.
In another universe, he becomes Man Wolf, so there's that too.
I'm just saying, there was so many problems with her as the love interest, and the fact that he went with her at the end. And it kind of shows how toxic the relationship was in Spider-Man 3. But aside from all that, this was Spider-Man at his peak. You see him struggling to be Spider-Man. You see him struggling as Peter Parker, from him trying to have a job, from him trying to do school and stuff, his rent and stuff. Like, all that just was classic Spider-Man. Is he was so relatable. And it was like, it was just so much in this film that just made me say, wow, I kind of see the struggles of what it would be as a superhero. Because I went, like, as a kid, I was like, Spider-Man would be so cool if I was like Spider-Man. But then you see like how hard it is to actually be him because he wants to keep his normal life. And it just really just blend. Like, this is the film that really shows the struggles of being a superhero and makes Spider-Man relatable. Now, aside from the Spider-Man stuff, I mean, at the time he was the best Spider-Man villain, but now it's Green Goblin. But Doctor Octopus is still like one of the best villains we've got.
I think he, like, if we take No Way Home out of it and the whole multiverse thing, I think this version of Doc Ock, I think Spider-Man 1 was the villain is fine, but Willem Dafoe elevated it. I think this character was so well written. And then I think Alfred Molina said, oh, you want me to be the best Spider-Man villain? Well, how about I take that and go, no, I'm going to be one of the best villains, like, in a movie recently. Like, the way that it's written in this, like, again, I don't think Spider-Man 1 villain is bad. It's just the Spider-Man 1 villain is, I'm Green Goblin. I'm the big bad guy, which is fine because at the time, that was what comic books were kind of known for. So it was them trying to figure out how to do it better. But this movie with the villain and the relationship and how all of those little layers with Doc Ock, it's brilliant. Which I actually feel like was kind of upsetting because I was hoping there's a lot more to him in No Way Home. And I feel like they kind of didn't. They did give it all to Willem Dafoe.
Yeah.
But like, unfortunately, I feel like in No Way Home, he was like, he wasn't terrible, but it just felt very like,
They put him to the side a little bit because, I
yeah,
mean, Spider-Man was just brawling with Goblin in that apartment, bro.
yeah.
Like, I think Sam Raimi just really wanted to shit on MJ for some reason. Like, I'm sorry, you just made one of the most unlikable relationships, and honestly, I don't know why. I'm sorry, in Spider-Man 3, if he ended up with Gwen, I would have been so happy. I would have been like, there you go, that's an upgrade. She's smart, knows what she wants to do, and doesn't suck at being an actress.
Yeah. But so anywho, it's very obvious what your number one is, which
Uh,
is
It is the Japanese Spider-Man where he has a machine gun and a Megazord.
You know, I was gonna make some joke about like it's the PS4 video game or something like that, but like
I mean, if
you
that was a movie, I'd put that at number one.
well, same here. But anyways, no, it's Spider-Verse, you idiot.
Yeah, I'm such a vote. Uh, what more can you say about this movie besides if you want a Spider-Man movie, you get a Spider-Man movie, and that's what Spider-Verse gave us. Now, I will say that there are some people that I heard actually shit on this movie because they wanted Peter Parker, not Miles Morales.
But the whole marketing of the movie was this was
What
not going to be Peter Parker, which like that's not even like you hate a character or you're racist or anything. It's just like the movie was marketed as a Miles Morales movie, so like why would you get mad? Just
exactly?
don't go
That's
see the movie.
don't see it. Like if you want to see like your favorite boy Tom Holland, then go ahead. And that
Yeah.
like that's kind of did what made me hate Tom Holland a little bit was because all the girls in my school just simped for him. I'm sorry, but what is the appeal? But anyways, no, off topic. No, Spider Verse is. Let's start off with the animation. Animation crispy, comic book style, and yet so fluid. And I'll say this: this film had the balls to do what no other film would do. As bad as some of the Sony Spider-Man movies are, they said, you know what? Let's just kill Spider-Man. Just have Kingpin just stomp him. And I was like, wow, they actually did something that just made me a little shook right now. And there's just so I mean, like I could go on and on about this movie, but there's just so many things that you get from it. You get the multiverse, you get Spider-Man, you get classic Spider-Man reference, and then you get a fresh take on not just the new version of Spider-Man, but the other versions like Spider-Gwen, Spider-Man Noir. And when I saw Spider-Man 2099, I was like, oh shit. Because he's
Yeah.
personally, like, besides Miles, is my favorite multiverse Spider-Man. And there's just so much to go on. I feel like this video would have to be split to like talk about it between me and you, like to say how good it is. Because I mean, it's the only one to have 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, so it's like it's perfect.
Yeah. But okay. Spider-Verse. We'll talk a little bit about that. Obviously, it's in my top 3 because I haven't brought it up yet. Number 3 is the realistically, I love this movie, but there are problems with it, and it's one of those like I love it for what it is, and if you really start breaking it down, like you said, there are some issues, and that is No Way Home. Um, Sandman and Lizard, they just said we don't need you. We're not going to have you in the movie. We're just going to shove you in so we can finish it out, and also because we're not going to try and call Dane DeHaan and James Franco is canceled, so we're we're not going to try and get them back. But this movie is just here's the thing for a movie that clearly the plot device of the movie was nostalgia bait. The fact that it actually works to build Tom Holland's Spider-Man, again, you can say whatever you want about this movie. I don't care. Clearly, we're trying to get you in the theaters because you know what you're going to see. But the fact that they still had the balls to be like, we're going to do that, but also actually make it benefit the story is what made me then go, oh, this movie's not just like awesome. This is like, because it could have just been, oh, cool, Toby and Andrew are back. But the fact that they actually made it to where they built Tom Holland's Spider-Man up from that, they didn't have to do that. They could have
And they
just taken our money. They could have taken our money just so they were in it. But they actually did so much more. I do agree. I think that there was things about this movie where it's like, I think the whole plot device of the whole wish thing was kind of like, yeah, it was a way for them to make the multiverse. It's fine. Again, I don't care. And I think, like you were saying, like Willem Dafoe again came into this movie and said, I'm going to eat every single second of the movie up, which is upsetting because, again, I think Doc Ock is the best from the Raimi. I think he's the best villain in all the live action Spider-Man, period. So it's a little upsetting that they kind of sideline him, but he's still great. Like when he shows up, Alfred Molina still comes to play. I will say this, and I know this isn't controversial, but this is something where I'm not going to lie. I think they changed Electro too much. Now, listen, we all know that the original Electro wasn't good. And I would have been fine if they changed him a little bit to where he wasn't as bad, but I don't like the fact that he does not feel like that Electro. They should have kept him blue. Honestly, what they should have done, this is what they should, no, because it's consistent with the character. This is what they should have done. When he had that thing on him, that should have sucked all the blue out of him. And then when he became like bad for the end of the movie, he should have just looked like Jamie Foxx. They should have found a better way to like, well, obviously we all know he was the one person in the movie that shouldn't have been because he's the only one that didn't know Peter Parker was Spider-Man.
True.
So there is that. So they obviously Jamie Foxx being Jamie Foxx status, they're like, well, again, we're not going to get Dane DeHaan or Paul Giamatti, even though I love Paul Giamatti, but you know, his whole Rhino thing.
What a waste.
So yeah, that whole thing cracked me up. That was MCU going, no, Sony, we're not gonna, no, get your Venom out. We're just gonna have him come in.
Missed opportunity.
Yeah. But other than that, I think I cried multiple times in the movie when they first. I was not ready for them to be as in the movie as much as they were either. Like when they first show up, and again, like you were saying, Andrew stole the show. But I think when I saw Toby, the idea of Toby coming back, I got physical. Like I was hitting myself. I was like, oh my God. Like I did not understand what was happening. And here's the thing. People thought that Tobey Maguire was not that good. He did what Peter did in those original 3 movies. He was awkward. He was goofy. I thought he did a good job. He did the original Spider-Man very well. I think their quips, again, the fact that they kept all those scenes in the movie so long, a normal movie wouldn't do that, but they knew what we wanted and they kept it all in. I thought the fights in the movie were really cool and grounded. I like the fact that, again, the ending was not this over-the-top thing. It was on the Statue of Liberty. It was simple. Again, we all know the whole Andrew Garfield saving MJ thing. That hit us in the feels. Yeah, again, this movie, when you look at it logistically, there are issues and there's kind of like, I don't know. But for an MCU Spider-Man, this is when I finally said, okay, like I'm cool. Like I got you. And then the final suit, which I cannot wait to see that suit in another movie because this is the first time that we got a good MCU Spider-Man suit. Bar none. That colorful ass suit at the very end of the movie, I went, oh my God, finally. So yeah, I'm excited to see where they go with that. But yeah, like you said, Willem Dafoe killed it. The action scenes where they're physical with each other was great. The one take where Peter has his spider sense tingling and it's the one shot, I'm like, oh my God, this is awesome. And like, yeah, it's great. This movie, again, I feel like anything you could say. I think the fact that the part when Peter, when Tobey Maguire is like, maybe she didn't die for nothing, and the original Spider-Man theme started playing, the da 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 da. I was like, oh my God. Yeah, like it did. Yes.
And I think one thing that this film actually did for other Spider-Man films is it actually elevated how you view the other Spider-Man films because it actually makes the other Spider-Man films better than they already were. Like if you watch this film and then watch the other Spider-Man films, you won't think of them as bad as you probably did before.
Well, it made me. No, it really made me go, damn, Andrew Garfield really got screwed because he was in 2 not so great Spider-Man movies and then they didn't give him a 3rd one. So I felt more bad for him because I was like, damn, he's so good. But besides the point, and fucking Daredevil shows up. So that was fun. But
that's out of nowhere though, to be honest. I mean, I think it's cool.
I will say, like I said, a lot of the plot devices and the fact that the whole end of the second movie was built on, oh my God, Spider-Man's in trouble. And then they kind of solve it in like the first 15, 20 minutes of the movie. Again, this movie is not perfect. But when I look at it for what I look at it for, I loved it. So, anyways, our top two are the same top two in the same order. So I'm just gonna get into it. Number two is what I consider the best live action Spider-Man movie. And I would say it's better in a certain ways than my number one, but obviously I already kind of spoiled what number one is with that, but we'll get into it. But Spider-Man 2, this movie it was before The Dark Knight. This was the gold standard of comic book movies. Like, this movie came out and fucked everything up. This movie was getting like perfect scores. People were like, what? This Spider-Man 2 is like this groundbreaking. Yeah, it was. The whole scene when Doc Ock breaks out, that was such a Sam Raimi scene. Like, it was over the top. It was violent. It was scary. This movie is, honestly, I don't care about the corny shit. Like, the raindrops keep falling on my head. I can ignore that because the rest of this movie is so layered. Every part of this movie works. His relationship, and I know you disagree with the MJ thing, but I think everything with MJ actually works in this movie. I think him and Harry's whole thing works. Him and Aunt May, her speech, that was the one thing that made me sad, is they didn't get a little cameo from her for No Way Home, because her speech in Spider-Man 2, again, the whole storyline of Spider-Man is Aunt May knows, but she never says anything because her whole thing is she's more worried about him. But in that scene, it's literally her being like, again, I know you're Spider-Man, but I know you don't want me to know, so I'm going to give you a speech that's going to make you decide to be Spider-Man again. And like, Doc Ock is incredible. The action scenes, the train sequence.
Dope.
And also, I just realized we have not fucking mentioned J.K. Simmons once. That fucking man, J. Jonah Jameson.
Put some disrespect by not mentioning him at all.
We are going to put respect on his name now. Well, I will say the whole thing with No Way Home, it felt kind of weirdly shoved in there. But in the original trilogy, J.K. Simmons was awesome. There's no reason why they have not, like in the Amazing Spider-Man movies, they didn't bring him back because they knew there was only one J. Jonah Jameson. It was J.K. Simmons. So he's fucking amazing. God, I love this movie. I love this movie so much. It's just so, and again, the whole thing with Doc Ock, like, it's a little like big and comic booky at the end, like with the whole I was gonna say vibranium, whatever the element is,
the power of the sun
in the palm of my hand, like,
and it's all tritium, by the way.
Okay, thank you. But like, that whole thing is like, the set piece at the end is so good. And again, his whole backstory is not just Dr. Octopus. It's like you said, it's tragic. It's so nuanced. And I think up until the Spider-Man game, Doc Ock, I'm like, how are they going to do Doc Ock like as good, or if not better than this? Like, this is phenomenal. And that's why I would love to see like how they did Doc Ock in the PS4 game, like in a movie, because I would be interested in that take. Because I thought I thought they couldn't outdo themselves.
It's simple. They
like,
get Norman Osborn to bend everybody over, and that's why he's essentially the big bad villain of Spider-Man.
Yeah,
and
but yeah, this movie's great. And then, you know, when Dashboard Confessional comes in the credits, vindicated. It's so early 2000s, and I love it. But yeah, number one is Spider-Verse. Probably in the top comic book origin stories ever. Top animated movies for me. The way it looks is gorgeous. I love the music, the vibe. Again, I don't think it's perfect, and it's only not perfect because even though everything in it is like incredible, some of the things that they do, I don't care about the Peter Parker thing. Like, it's not that. but there are little things there where I'm like, okay, like it's a little too like it's not my perfect Spider-Man movie, but it's the best one we've gotten. I know everyone thinks this is perfect. I'm not saying they're wrong for that. It's just one of those things where this movie is almost perfect, but it's just missing something. And I think that's why I think the PS4 Spider-Man is like my
Well,
favorite.
well, then
Um
answer well, the real question is then what is Spider-Verse missing that could satisfy you?
I don't know. Like, I think it definitely, like, obviously, No Way Home was self referential, but, there's a lot of jokey self referential stuff. The other characters coming in. I'm more interested in seeing what this next one's going to be because it looks like it's going to be more grounded. Like with Spider Man 2099, there's others they've announced or been leaked that I'm not going to say because I don't want people to get mad. So I'm not going to say them.
Dude,
But, like,
somebody finna die.
yeah, but like it feels like I love Spider-Ham, but it's like there's little things in here, and like with Kingpin being in it, Kingpin's a good villain, but it was like it was okay. Like again, I don't think his villain was terrible or like amazing. It's good. It works. I think everything involving Miles and Peter B. Parker is the reason why this movie is excellent. And then with the way it looks and I think there are some little jokes in here that just don't that work so well because it's the Lego movie guys too. So there's so many parts to it and like everything with Prowler, like the music, it's perfect. And like I will say one of I think my favorite scene and shot from any Spider-Man movie, and we all know what it is, the scene where he is falling through the buildings, but the buildings are upside down and he's falling upwards at the end. That's
Yeah.
like literally that was my favorite movie scene in a movie that year. And every time I see it, when the music stops and it shows him going up, I sit there going like, oh
Going
my
down.
God. Yeah, he's going down, but he's rising.
Well, you mean he's falling?
But that's the thing in the script is they said the reason why they flipped it is because don't fucking be funny with me. I know what you're doing, Christian. I know what you're doing. Yeah, this movie, every time I've watched it, I'm just like, it's fabulous. Like it's so and the way that everyone has a different art style too, it's like, and honestly, I'm telling you, dude, once again, the scene when they show up at Aunt May's and
Oh yeah,
I'm not ready for this. And she's like, oh my God, you look terrible. And he's like, and she's just like, you're from another, like,
he's fat too.
dog. Like, I am fucking telling you, that scene right there made me so, like, God. And, like, yeah, like,
I'll say this though. I think the one thing that I was like, this is a little corny was the Spider-Man lair he had. He don't got money for a lair. Let's be honest. He lives with his aunt or can barely afford an apartment. He does not have a spider car.
well, let's be honest. The only reason why they did that is because that was a whole Easter egg thing. Because the spider car is real, all the suits are real. It's just, I think that was more of like a plot device to, and it's, hey, we've never seen that in Spider-Man before, so it was kind of a different take on it. I love Scorpion in this version. I wish they had him in it more. I thought he was
I,
really cool.
I mean, I guess because like how
Like
do you?
I'm not saying like he was a good villain. I'm just saying I love the way that he looked. Like he looked really cool. Yeah, this movie's phenomenal. It's the fact that this is the same company that I'm pretty sure in the same year put out the Emoji movie and then they put out this. It's the duality of Sony Pictures Animated. And then like you were saying, this is Sony. MCU is not even involved in this. And that is why this movie is so shockingly good that they pulled this off. But like
And
I
then
said, they
how?
gave the Lego guys, Chris Miller and Phil Lord, like they gave
Yeah.
them big reins and they gave their directors big reins. And
And
it
this
made me super excited for part two because now I'm like, with this movie, I think it did different things that I don't think we're going to see. Like, I think it's going to be funny, but I think this movie was Penny Parker, let's make Spider-Man Noir, which, let's be honest, they didn't give Nicolas Cage a script. They just said, say whatever weird shit comes to your head. And then he was like, okay. And he was so funny and out, like, all over the place. But yeah,
This
this move, yeah, I'm excited for part 2. But yeah, as of right now, this is, I think, what Spider-Man can be. The Stan Lee cameo, this was like a few weeks after he passed, so it was like even more like, oh my god, it like was so heartbreaking. But yeah, I love it. And
and
yes.
yeah, so personally though, I am actually a little worried for this new Spider-Man movie
Oh
because
yeah.
I'm sorry, but for them to try so hard on one movie and for it to bomb that badly, it just amazed me. Morbius. How do you take
Well, let's be honest. This movie has been in production before Morbius was like a thing. So like I'm more excited because, like I said, we've seen certain rumors and leaks, and from that one quick teaser that came out where he's flying through all the universes in Spider-Man
yeah,
2099, like, I'm not
so
a big multiverse guy. Like, I'll admit, like, sometimes it's cool, sometimes I'm like, I don't really care about it. But this movie, I was like, this looks like it's gonna be trippy and like really weird. And like the one screenshot that came out of Spot
oh yeah,
looks, yeah, it looks really cool and creepy. Um,
and the future for Spider-Man right now is just gonna be doing a lot. Like they got the Madam Web thing coming out, they got Craven trying to
yeah.
set up Spider-Man stuff. So I'll say the year for Spider-Man is looking high, but there is gonna be some bumps in the road while they do that too.
And all I'm looking forward to is Insomniac Games with Spider-Man 2.
And I am not looking forward to ever watching Far From Home again. Just
Well, on that note, you fucking asshole. Thank you so much for watching a brand new Rankum here on the channel. We're probably gonna post this all throughout August because we're celebrating Spider-Man. And my boy is one of the big Spider-Man guys that I know. And I promised him for a long time. I said it was gonna happen. We were gonna
3 years.
shoot. 3 years in the making, everybody. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on, Christian. Is there anything you have to say to the people before I end the video off?
Yeah. So one, Marvel, Sony, cast me as Miles Morales, and two, fuck Spider-Man Lotus.
Oh, that's that fan film. Why are you saying fuck it?
Uh, you'll see, you'll see some stuff. You'll see if you look at the bad production on what's going on, you'll understand.
Oh, well, okay then. I didn't know. I'll have to research. But anyways, thank you so much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. I have a Kendrick Lamar rankum you can go check out, and as well as other videos on the channel. And go check out Christian's channel. I know he hasn't posted in a while, but you should go watch when he first reacted to No Way Home.
I posted a video recent. I mean, it was a while ago. It was a birthday vlog, kind of. Yeah,
That's what I'm telling you. You should go watch his reaction to the first No Way Home trailer. It's pretty fun. I love it.
I
Um,
guess.
but anyways, until then, thank you all so much for watching. Thank you for tuning in to Channel BK. Peace out, everyone.
Yeah.